Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachadi. Yamuna Tira Vanachadi. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachali. Yamuna Tira Vanachali. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so this evening, welcome to the few devotees who are here in the temple room, and whoever is watching online or who will watch later. Good evening to you. So this evening we're reading from the Nectar of Instruction. The last, every class, Sunday feast class I've been speaking on a verse and purport of the Nectar of Instruction. So now we're on text 10. So we went through the last 9 text, and today's text 10. Karma bhya parito harer priyataya vaktim yayor ganinas tebhyo jnana vimukta bhakti parama premaika nishtastata tebhyastha pashupala pankajadrishasthabhyo pisa radhika prishta tadvariyam tradiya sarasitam Nashayat kriti. All right, so if you could please repeat after me. Karmi bhyaha, then all fruit of workers. Paritaha, in all respects. Harehe, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Priyataya, because of having been favored. Vaktim yayuhu, it is said in the Shastra. Jnaninaha, those advanced in knowledge. Tebhyaha, superior to them. Jnana vimukta, liberated by knowledge. Bhakti paramaha, those engaged in devotional service. Prema ekanishtaha, those who have attained pure love of God. Tataha, superior to them. Tebhyaha, better than them. Taha, they. Pashupala pankajadrishaha, the gopis who are always dependent on Krishna, the cowherd boy. Tabhyaha, above all of them. Api, certainly. Sa, she. Radhika, Srimati Radhika. Prishta, very dear. Tadvat, similarly. Iyam, this. Tadiya Sarasi, her lake, Shri Radha Kund. Tam, Radha Kund. Na, not. Ashrayat, would take shelter of. Kaha, who? Kriti, most fortunate. Okay. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In the Shastra, scripture, it is said that of all types of fruit of workers, he who is advanced in knowledge of the higher values of life is favored by the Supreme Lord Hari. Out of many such people who are advanced in knowledge, jnanis, one who is practically liberated by virtue of his knowledge may take to devotional service. He is superior to the others. However, one who has actually attained prema, pure love of Krishna, is superior to him. The gopis are exalted above all the advanced devotees because they are always totally dependent upon Sri Krishna, the transcendental cowherd boy. Among the gopis, Srimati Radharani is the most dear to Krishna. Her Kund, lake, is as profoundly dear to Lord Krishna as this most beloved of all the gopis. Who then will not reside at Radha Kund and, in a spiritual body surcharged with ecstatic devotional feelings, aprakrita bhava, render loving service to the divine couple Shri Shri Radha Govinda, who perform their Ashtakaliya Leela, their eternal eightfold daily pastimes. Indeed, those who execute devotional service on the banks of Radha Kund are the most fortunate people in the universe. Purport. At the present moment, almost everyone is engaged in some kind of fruitive activity. Those who are desirous of gaining material profits by working are called karmis, or fruitive workers. All living entities within this material world have come under the spell of Maya. This is described in the Vishnu Purana, 6.7.61. Vishnu Shakti Para Prokta Chetragyakya Tatapara Avidya Karma Samgyanya Tirtya Shakti Ishate. Sages have divided the energies of the Supreme Personality of God into three categories, namely the spiritual energy, marginal energy, and material energy. The material energy is considered to be the third-class energy. Tritiya Shakti. Those living entities within the jurisdiction of the material energy sometimes engage themselves, like dogs and hogs, in working very hard, simply for sense gratification. However, in this life, or after executing pious activities in the next life, some karmis become strongly attracted to perform various kinds of sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas. Thus, on the strength of their pious merit, they are elevated to the heavenly planets. Actually, those who perform sacrifices strictly according to Vedic injunctions are elevated to the moon and planets above the moon. As mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 9, text 22. Chine pune martalokam vishanti. After exhausting the results of their so-called pious activities, they again return to the earth, which is called Martyaloka, the place of death. Although such persons may be elevated to the heavenly planets by their pious activities, and although they may enjoy life there for many thousands of years, they nonetheless must return to this planet when the results of their pious activities are exhausted. This is the position of all karmis, including those who act piously and those who act impiously. On this planet we find many businessmen, politicians, and others who are simply interested in material happiness. Okay. They attempt to earn money by all means, not considering whether such means are pious or impious. Such people are called karmis, or gross materialists. Among the karmis are some vikarmis, people who act without the guidance of Vedic knowledge. Those who act on the basis of Vedic knowledge perform sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Lord Vishnu and to receive benedictions from him. Period. In this way they are elevated to higher planetary systems. Such karmis are superior to the vikarmis, for they are faithful to the directions of the Vedas and are certainly dear to Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 4, text 11, Krishna says, Ye yata mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamiham. In whatever way one surrenders unto me, I reward him accordingly. Krishna is so kind that he fulfilled the desires of the karmis and jnanis, not to speak of the bhaktas. Although the karmis are sometimes elevated to higher planetary systems, as long as they remain attached to fruitive activities, they must accept new material bodies after death. If one acts piously, he can attain a new body among the demigods in the higher planetary systems. Or he may attain some other position in which he can enjoy a higher standard of material happiness. On the other hand, those who are engaged in impious activities are degraded and take birth as animals, trees, and plants. Thus, those fruitive actors who do not care for the Vedic injunctions, vikarmis, are not appreciated by learned saintly persons. Try. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.4, Nunam pramatta kurate vikarma yat indriya pritaya apranoti nasarumanya yata atmanoyam asannapish kleshada asadeha. Materialists who work hard like dogs and hogs simply for sense gratification are actually mad. They simply perform all kinds of abominable activities simply for sense gratification. Materialistic activities are not at all worthy of an intelligent man, for as a result of such activities one gets a material body, which is full of misery. The purpose of human life is to get out of the threefold miserable conditions, which are concomitant with material existence. Unfortunately, fruitive workers are mad to earn money and acquire temporary material comforts by all means. Therefore, they risk being degraded to lower species of life. Materialists foolishly make many plans to become happy in this material world. They do not stop to consider that they will live only for a certain number of years, out of which they must spend the major portion acquiring money for sense gratification. Ultimately, such activities end in death. Materialists do not consider that after giving up the body, they may become embodied as lower animals, plants, or trees. Thus, all their activities simply defeat the purpose of life. Not only are they born ignorant, but they act on the platform of ignorance, thinking that they are getting material benefits in the shape of skyscraper buildings, big cars, honorable positions, and so on. The materialists do not know that in the next life they will be degraded, and that all their activities simply serve as parabhava, their defeat. This is the verdict of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, Text 5. Parabhavas tavadabodha jata. Okay. One should therefore be eager to understand the science of the soul, Atma Tattva. Unless one comes to the platform of Atma Tattva, by which one understands that the soul and not the body is oneself, one remains on the platform of ignorance. Out of thousands and even millions of ignorant people who are wasting their time simply gratifying their senses, one may come to the platform of knowledge and understand higher values of life. Such a person is called a jnani. The jnani knows that fruitive activities will bind him to material existence and cause him to transmigrate from one kind of body to another. As indicated in Srimad Bhagavatam by the term Sharira Bandha, bound to bodily existence, as long as one maintains any conception of sense enjoyment, his mind will be absorbed in karma, fruitive activity, and this will oblige him to transmigrate from one body to another. Thus, a jnani is considered superior to a karmi because he at least refrains from the blind activities of sense enjoyment. This is the verdict of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However, although a jnani may be liberated from the ignorance of the karmis, unless he comes to the platform of devotional service, he is still considered to be in ignorance, avidya. Although one may be accepted as a jnani or one advanced in knowledge, his knowledge is considered impure because he has no information of devotional service, and thus neglects the direct worship of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When a jnani takes to devotional service, he rapidly becomes superior to any ordinary jnani. Such an advanced person is described as jnana vimukta bhakti parama. How a jnani takes to devotional service is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 7, Text 19, wherein Krishna says, Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavamam prapadyate vasudevam sarvamiti samahatma sudulabha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Actually, a person is wise when he surrenders unto the lotus feet of Krishna, but such a Mahatma, a great soul, is very rare. After taking to devotional service under the regulative principles, a person may come to the platform of spontaneous love of Godhead, following in the footsteps of great devotees like Narada and Sanaka and Sanatan. The Supreme Personality of Godhead then recognizes him to be superior. The devotees who have developed love of Godhead are certainly in an exalted position. So Prabhupada's making his way up these different levels of advancement. Of all these devotees, the gopis are recognized as superior because they do not know anything other than satisfying Krishna. Nor do the gopis expect any return from Krishna. Indeed, sometimes Krishna puts them into extreme suffering by separating himself from them. Nonetheless, they cannot forget Krishna. When Krishna left Vrindavan for Mathura, the gopis became most dejected and spent the rest of their lives simply crying in separation from Krishna. This means that in one sense they were never actually separated from Krishna. There is no difference between thinking of Krishna and associating with him. Rather Vipralamba Seva, thinking of Krishna in separation as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did, is far better than serving Krishna directly. Thus, of all the devotees who have developed unalloyed devotional love for Krishna, the gopis are most exalted. And of all of these exalted gopis, Srimati Radharani is the highest. No one can excel the devotional service of Srimati Radharani. Indeed, even Krishna cannot understand the attitude of Srimati Radharani. Therefore, he took her position and appeared as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, just to understand her transcendental feelings. Let's just have two more paragraphs here. In this way, Srila Rupa Goswami gradually concludes that Srimati Radharani is the most exalted devotee of Krishna, and that her Kund, lake, Sri Radha Kund, is the most exalted place. This is verified in a quotation from Laghu Bhagavatamrita, Uttarakhand 45, as quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yata Radha Priya Vishnos Tasya Kundam Priyam Tata Sarvagopishu Saivaika Vishnur Atyanta Vallabha. Just as Srimati Radharani is dear to the Supreme Lord, Krishna, Vishnu, so her bathing place, Radha Kund, is equally dear to Krishna. Among all the gopis, she alone stands supreme as the Lord's most beloved. Therefore, everyone interested in Krishna consciousness should ultimately take shelter of Radha Kund and execute devotional service there throughout one's life. This is the highest conclusion of Rupa Goswami. This is the conclusion of Rupa Goswami in the 10th verse of Upadesamrta. Thus ends the purport. Om Jnanitimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshulanmaditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karidavachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Diditarinam Pancha Kapadurubhyashta Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gauda Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Krishna. So I'll read the translation again. This verse, Nectar Instruction, text 10. In the Shastra, it is said that of all types of fruitive workers, he who is advanced in knowledge of the higher values of life is favored by the Supreme Lord, Hari. And of many such people who are advanced in knowledge, Jnanis, one who is practically liberated by virtue of his knowledge may take to devotional service. He is superior to others. However, one who has actually attained prema, pure love of Krishna, is superior to him. The gopis are exalted above all the advanced devotees because they are always totally dependent upon Sri Krishna, the transcendental cowherd boy. Among the gopis, Srimati Radharani is the most dear to Krishna. Her Kund lake is as profoundly dear to Lord Krishna as this most beloved of the gopis. Who then will not reside at Radha Kund and in a spiritual body surcharged with ecstatic devotional feelings, a prakrita bhav, render loving service to the divine couple Shri Shri Radha Govinda who perform their Ashtakaliya Leela, their eternal eightfold daily pastimes. Indeed, those who execute devotional service on the banks of Radha Kunda are the most fortunate people in the universe. So Rupa Goswami's wrote this book, Upadesamrta. Srila Prabhupada translated it for us and wrote his purports for us, for everyone, as wide as possible. And sometimes, because the nectar of instruction, it starts off as, okay, vacho vegam, manasa kroda vegam, jiva vegam, durapasta vegam, etan vegam, yo vishaheta dira, sarvam apimam prithavim shishya, that the exact translation is, a sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. So it's referring to the qualifications of a guru or Goswami. And Srila Rupa Goswami is advising us through this book, this first verse especially, Vacho Vegamana, to become Goswamis, to control our mind, to control our senses. So it starts off there. And then it goes into the 6 favorable, I think, is it the 6, let's see. Yeah, 6 favorable, the second verse goes into those things which are unfavorable. 6 things which are unfavorable. And the third verse goes into 6 things that are favorable for devotional service. Fourth, the 6 Levin exchanges. A lot of 6s going on here. The 6 Levin exchanges. And 5, let's see here. 5, it's Rupa Goswami is describing the different types of devotees and how to offer respect to them and have a relationship with the different types of devotees. And 6 is referring to, just as the Ganges sometimes appears impure due to mud or foam or whatever it may be, but a learned person bathes in the Ganges because it's purifying. So similarly, the body of a pure devotee may seem to be contaminated this way or that way, but a learned person will take association of that devotee and overlook that. It doesn't matter. And text 7 is talking about the holy name, how it's sweet, right, like sugar candy. But persons with the disease of jaundice just say they can't taste sugar, so it's not sweet to them. So a person infected with ignorance cannot relish the holy name, character, pastimes of Krishna. But by taking that, the cure for jaundice is to take sugar, and then eventually it becomes sweet. The disease goes away. So similarly, carefully chanting Krishna's names every day, that taste will develop. In text 8, essence of all advice, right? 24 hours engaged in hearing and chanting about Krishna, and so on. And 9, talking about the different holy places, Govardhan Hill and the different forests of Vrindavan and Radha Kunda. It's also mentioned in Radha Kunda there, last verse. In text 10 and 11 is also dealing with, like we just read 10, dealing with Srimati Radharani and also Radha Kunda, and same with text 11. And that concludes the book. So, Srila Prabhupada, he translated this book, commented on it, and he made it available for mass distribution. So even now, today, we don't seem to be distributing so many nectar of instructions these days, but it is a mass distribution book. so we could give it to anybody on the street, at the beach, or wherever we're going. And Prabhupada did that also with Krishna book, Master Distribution book, the 10th canto, which is said to, it's like essence of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the most advanced section of the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto. And similarly, these verses, text 10, text 11, especially, dealing with Radha Kunda and different topics, it is an advanced subject matter. And it's not easily understandable. That's the word, right? It's not easily understandable. And it does take a lot of, to understand it, we need purified senses. Right? Krishna won't reveal himself unless we have purified senses. Ata Shri Krishna Nama Di Nabhavedgayam Indriya Sevan Mukha Jivada Swayameva Spratada. So the material senses cannot perceive Krishna, blunt material senses cannot perceive Krishna, but by purifying them, by engaging them in devotional service, specifically mentions the tongue, tasting food offered to Krishna, prasadam, in chanting the holy names, Krishna, the senses become purified, and Krishna reveals himself. So it is possible. It may be difficult, but it is possible. So yeah, in these books, Srila Prabhupada, he's widely informing people. Nectar of Instruction, Krishna book, these different books, he's widely informing people of this highest goal of these highest topics of Krishna consciousness. And he's also informing us of these highest topics, highest goals. And these are supposed to, hearing about these and meditating on them and thinking about them and so on, it's supposed to help us develop aspirations to make progress towards that being the goal. And in life, we become absorbed in so many goals, right? We want to get educated. It's a big goal. Okay, I'm going to go to this college, that college, right? I'm going to get this degree, that degree, PhD. It's a goal in life. And after that, I mean, of course, there's so many goals before that, but getting to that stage of life. Then there's goals, okay, well, I'm going to get a very well-paying job. That's a goal in life. I'm going to get, and then people think, okay, I'll get a beautiful or handsome spouse. And then that's a goal, right? Or if they're not thinking that, a nice spouse or somebody who loves me. Yeah. And then they think, okay, well, I'll have some nice, beautiful children, and we'll go on vacations, and we'll live here, and we'll buy this, and we'll buy that. And this is the general these are the general aspirations that people have throughout the world, which is quite interesting, actually. Like wherever you go to China, you go to South India, you go to Canada, Hawaii, like everywhere you go, practically they're all kind of thinking in these terms. Or at least in some types of terms like that. It may not be exactly like that, but largely there's a lot of that same thinking. So these are aspirations, these are desires, these are goals within our life, which Prabhupada talks about here. He's talking about the karmis, which a lot of people get stuck on that level. Okay, karmis. Just work. Prabhupada says like hogs and dogs, sense gratification, and not really thinking of the ultimate goal of life. Karmis, vikarmis. Specifically, vikarmis are those who act against the Vedic injunctions. Karmis are those who act within the Vedic paradigm, but for, wanting to go to the heavenly planets and this and that. Material enjoyment. And then, but Prabhupada, quoting Srimad Bhagavatam, it says that this is a waste, because they're striving for temporary goals and striving for goals that don't really satisfy them ultimately. And being absorbed in so many goals in life, they don't strive for the ultimate goal of life. What to speak of even wondering about it, or even having some curiosity in that regard. They don't. A lot of people don't. So, for those who are on the spiritual path, we should try to know what the goal is, and we should try to make progress towards it and think about it, and not get overly absorbed in these other goals in our life, like everybody else's. So many people are. When it's mentioned in here, it's talking about living in Radha Kunda, which is at the foot of Govardhan Hill, which now, you buy a plane ticket to Delhi. Of course, now there's some restrictions, but you buy a plane ticket to Delhi. You could go San Francisco to Delhi directly, right? Is it? I think so. San Francisco to Delhi, or you could go, whatever, LA, New York, Delhi, or however you go. You buy a ticket, you could reach Delhi. And then from New Delhi, India, you take a taxi, I think maybe, 3 hours. And eventually, generally, devotees go directly to Vrindavan, Krishna Balaram Temple, or nearby. And then from Krishna Balaram Temple, you take a rickshaw, or a taxi. And maybe it's, an hour, maybe less, sometime, and you'll arrive at Govardhan, and then at Govardhan, Radha Kunda is there. You could go directly to Radha Kunda. So in many ways, it seems quite simple, right, to go to Radha Kunda. But as Srila Prabhupada pointed out so many times, you can't buy a ticket to Vrindavan. It's not so easy. So there's a particular price that one has to pay in order to be qualified to enter Vrindavan. What to speak of Radha Kunda, Govardhan. There's a certain price. And it's a high price, and it's... there's a price. And the price is one has to fully surrender to Krishna. One has to fully surrender to the spiritual master. And one has to remain surrendered. It's not like, okay, well, I surrendered once and that's it. I surrendered at initiation, right? I said my vows. I won't. No illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, no meeting. I will chant 16 rounds a day. That's a surrender, right, at that moment. But then after that, it's like coasting or something. One devotee was talking about coasting the other day. Not really putting the proper energy that's required to actually surrender on a daily basis. So we have to surrender, then stay surrendered. And aside from that, Vrindavan is, or Radha Kunda, these holy places, entering these places, or you could say entering the state of mind, or the level of Krishna consciousness required to actually enter these different places, is one of freedom from any desires other than serving Krishna. So, desires, like Srila Prabhupada would say sometimes in relation to Radha Kunda, because some devotees want to prematurely go there, means they're not free. Anya bilashita shun yam jnana karmana avritam anukulyana Krishna shilanam bhakti uttama. They're not free from all these different material desires, and they want to prematurely go there. So, and they would quote this nectar instruction. Well, Rupa Goswami says, go there. Prabhupada would say that, he would say, well, first you have to follow the first instructions, vacho vega manaso krodha. First control senses and mind. And all the other instructions, right? Atyahara, not over collecting, not over endeavoring, not over eating, not associating with worldly people. And then on the positive, utsaha nishchaya daryat, right? Patience, confidence, enthusiasm, and devotional service. So Prabhupada would quote that first, follow those instructions. And he said, don't jump like a monkey. And using this term of a monkey, I mean, sometimes in America people say, oh, it's kind of whatever, cute term, monkey or something, but using this term monkey, it's actually a very well thought out term, because monkeys in Vrindavan and wherever, they're they're always stealing things, and like Prabhupada would say, don't live at Radha Kunda like a monkey. With Prabhupada would say, what did he say? He said 36 seva dasis, which means like maidservants or mistresses. In other words, people engaged in illicit affairs there, like monkeys. So he said, don't live in Radha Kunda like that. And you see that that's the business of monkeys. They're just stealing and eating and having sex. So similarly, people with such mentalities living in holy places, what's the point? They're not qualified. And someone may say, well, okay, well, I'm free from the gross desires for sense gratification. But what about the subtle ones? Desires for whatever recognition and whatever profit, adoration. These different subtle desires. And some may say, well, I managed to control those. And then you say, okay, well, what about your pride? Are you proud to be... Because it's a very common thing within religious circles, whether it's Krishna consciousness or any other religious circles, that people, they're living a good life, sattvic, pure, right? They're not doing all the they're not engaged in all these low activities, or they're not they live in a pure life. So that could by becoming absorbed in that, by thinking about that, so one can become puffed up, one could become proud that, oh, I'm so great. So that pride also is something that those who have that pride, they can't enter Vrindavan. So it's not just controlling gross lust or subtle lust, or how much food you put in your belly, or how much prasadam you put in your belly, or whatever or how much stuff you collect. It's actually getting free of that pride, which also is a big killer in devotional service. enemy. So that also has to be removed. So everything has to be removed. Any material contamination that has to be removed. Then one can enter. So then, hearing this, sometimes people say, okay, well, I might as well just go there now. I'm pure enough, right? People may think that. But everything that we do in Krishna consciousness has to be checked. We have to check sadhu, shastra, guru. In other words, do the saintly persons think I should do that? What does it say in shastra? What does my spiritual master think about that? Not that we just do things independently, but what does my spiritual master think about that? And for followers of Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada also set a particular example, what he did personally. And Srila Prabhupada, he himself, by his example, was very much into outreach work, preaching Krishna consciousness, trying to bring conditioned souls to the lotus feet of Krishna. And largely, if not, say wholly, Prabhupada was basing our entering the higher topics of Krishna consciousness, our entering the higher realms of Krishna consciousness, based on us trying to Yadi Dekataka Krishna Pradesh, that become a guru, liberate the land, try to help others, try to bring people to Krishna by outreach work. Which is not, it's not like a, it's not a platform of, that neophytes operate on. Oh, preaching, it's just for the neophytes or something. It's for the people who don't know, but it's for the people who are too dumb and too unqualified to enter Radha Kunda. That's not a good conception. But preaching Prabhupada, what was he doing? And by doing this, he was teaching us that this is a way to enter Vrindavan. Right? Prabhupada said in Los Angeles one time, you want the mercy of Radha, you want the service of Radha Krishna, you want to enter Vrindavan, you want to become a resident of Radha Kunda, you want to enter the higher topics of Krishna consciousness, then you have to get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to do that within this age. This is Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, last time I checked. It's Lord Chaitanya's movement, Sankirtan movement. So if you want to approach Radha Krishna, you have to go through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You can't jump over Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Who would be so foolish and unfortunate? So you have to get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but in order to get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you have to get the mercy of Lord Nityananda Prabhu, who is most merciful. His appearance is coming up soon. Nityananda Ram, Balaram, Hoilo Nitai, Balaram became Nityananda. You have to get the mercy of Nityananda Prabhu. And in order to get the mercy of Nityananda Prabhu, he says you have to approach people like Jaga and Madai, who are the most wretched, sinful, fallen people of Bengal at the time. Which, there's plenty of Jagais and Madais, don't worry. You go to Hong Kong, you'll find plenty of them. You go to San Diego, you'll find plenty of them. Wherever you go, they're everywhere. Because everybody in Kali Yuga is more or less like Jaga and Madai. So, to spread Krishna consciousness, that's how we get the mercy of Nityananda, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then approach Radha and Krishna. So it's not just it's not a platform. The preaching platform is not a platform to keep neophytes busy because they can't do anything else, but is a platform in which they actually able to enter into the higher topics and realms of Krishna. And of course, when we say higher, preaching. It's most wonderful activity. Prabhupada was going all over the planet doing it. So we shouldn't be thinking, having these strange thoughts, that I'm engaged in those lower activities and ultimately I want to get in this higher activity, but it's not a good conception. But generally, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, by his example and by Srila Prabhupada's example, and also Bhaktivinoda Thakur's example, these recent acharyas specifically, and of course Srila Prabhupada, our founder acharya, he's teaching us how to live and how to act and how to be a devotee. They specifically were very much engaged in this outreach work, and they didn't retire to Radha Kunda or such places, which they could have, but they didn't. But we do have examples of that within our tradition, like 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. They were there, but they're living extremely austere lives, bowing down, so many obeisances every day, and practically not eating or sleeping, and 192 rounds a day, however much they're chanting. They're chanting a lot. They're doing a lot of austerities. So that's Radha Kunda, living in Radha Kunda. So we do have examples of that, and there is even like right now there's devotees in Vrindavan. It's not like there's no devotee, like ISKCON devotees in Vrindavan. They're there, and then also we have our temple Radha Kunda. We have a ISKCON temple there as well. So it's not that the holy places the devotees don't live there. But it all should be done under the guidance of the spiritual master. And I always meditate and try to think about Srila Prabhupada's example of him just really putting a lot of energy out in preaching. And then in this way, like Advaita Acharya, I think it's Advaita Acharya, right? He told Lord Chaitanya, wherever you are is Vrindavan. That's Advaita Acharya, right? So he says, wherever you are is Vrindavan. So wherever Srila Prabhupada was, Vrindavan. Goloka Vrindavan is all pervading. It's not just restricted to a certain place. It's all pervading. So here we have Govardhan, Giriraj Govardhan we're worshiping on the altar. So Govardhan's here. This is new Govardhan, provided one has the eyes to see. So in other words, one could be externally engaged in outreach work in this world, whereas their internal consciousness or their state of being, they're absorbed in Vrindavan. They don't necessarily have to be living in Vrindavan. Like Rupa Goswami, he makes that point. He says, okay, you can live in Vrindavan, but for whatever reason, if you choose not to or you can't, you should always be thinking of Vrindavan. And this way you live there. So when it says you could go to Radha Kunda, it's true. You could go. But the real you could say really entering Radha Kunda means giving up these desires, becoming material desires, giving up all material desires, and just focus on a desire to serve Krishna and being absorbed in Vrindavan with our consciousness. So, there's many people who live at Radha Kunda, but Prabhupada said they don't live at Radha Kunda. They live in Naraka Kunda. I think Naraka, Naraki, something like that. It means hellish. Hellish Kunda. They don't live in Radha Kunda, although they're there. And there's many people who do not live in Radha Kunda, but they're very much absorbed in Vrindavan. So it's about consciousness ultimately. So, just like Prabhupada said about Kamsa. Kamsa was living in Mathura. He was one of the greatest demons, right, ever, wanting to kill Krishna. So he was living in a holy place, though. He said that also demons, they try to enter Vrindavan, right? Putana, Pakasura, Trinavarta, right? Shakatasura, all these demons, they were entering Vrindavan. They wanted to go to Vrindavan. But what was their qualification? They didn't. They wanted to kill Krishna. So in other words, just wanting to go to Vrindavan or just living in a holy place is not good enough. But one has to, right, favorably. So, okay. So does anybody have any questions or comments? Anybody here in this room or anybody online? YouTube, Facebook, Zoom, all these different platforms. Maybe you could take off your mask and then... Do you have a microphone? Oh, is somebody asking a question? Can you get the microphone for him, please? But you have a question? Okay, he's getting the microphone.
Hare Krishna. So, what is the significance of the holy dhams, Prabhu? Then, hello.
Yes, I hear you. What is the significance of the holy dham?
Like the physical.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Well, the holy dhams. There's many different dhams, holy places. There's 10 offenses to the dham, actually. But yeah, the holy dhams, you have Mayapur dham, you have Vrindavan dham, many different holy, Jagannath Puri, many different places. And these places are special, most significant, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was in Puri, he was in, for example, spent many years in Puri, Vrindavan, Krishna was... Yeah, Krishna's there. Krishna appeared there. He grew up there, and same with Mayapur. You have Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So many. Yeah, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was there, is there, but also so many great devotees have lived there. Like they have the 64 samadhis, which so many acharyas. They have their transcendental forms were entombed there. So it's like very powerful. So in all these different places in Vrindavan, you could go to places, okay, well this is where Krishna, he killed Keshi demon, right? Horse demon. And this is where Krishna danced with the gopis. This is where Krishna jumped off a tree to get Kaliya, snake, and on and so on. So So these places are, you say, spiritually surcharged. Spiritually surcharged. And that's how a holy dham is supposed to be. Like the temples that we say New Govardhan Dham, it's a holy place. They're supposed to be surcharged with spiritual energy, and it is. But yeah, these places are special because of that. And by visiting these places, Srila Prabhupada wanted devotees to visit Vrindavan regularly in Mayapur and Puri, because, and specifically Srila Prabhupada was emphasizing Mayapur and Vrindavan. We had the Mayapur Vrindavan festival. But Puri's there also. But Srila Prabhupada wanted devotees to visit these places to themselves get spiritually surcharged, to get purified, and then come back to the West, to wherever they're located, and engage in more missionary activities, and then go and come back like that. So to go on pilgrimage. So all devotees should go. Devotees should go, and they should think about it and meditate on it, and study up before they go, and go to see the different holy places. Of course, we see by hearing. And you see that like different places in the world, they have different impacts on our consciousness. Like you go to Las Vegas, it's a very degraded place, actually, sensual and degraded. So that will put somebody into a particular mood. In other words, a very degraded, state of consciousness. It'll influence us. So similarly, you go to Vrindavan, or you go to Mayapur, and it's just very easy to be Krishna conscious. Like you go to Vrindavan, and everybody's wearing tilak, and Jai Radhe, rickshaw drivers, rickshawallas to this day, they don't say, hey, move out of the way. They say, Jai Radhe, and everything Jai Radhe. So they're just chanting all the time. So it's very easy to be Krishna conscious. So many devotees, and very wonderful experience. So,
I was just going to comment something that I heard recently that is somewhat relevant. My spiritual master said in a talk, well, it was actually a talk, it was pretty similar to, it was called You Don't Have to Go to India. I don't know if you saw it, but anyway.
No, I didn't see it.
But he makes the point that many devotees, which is true, they have issues with how the culture in the West is not so conducive to Krishna consciousness a lot of the time. And specifically, I think he was talking about schools, but
like colleges,
or devotees want to send their kids to public schools and things like that. And worried about certain influences and things like that. So he was saying, going to India is good, and every devotee should go to India. But if all the devotees have the idea to go to India, then there's no preaching in the West. And there's no way that the West can become conducive to Krishna consciousness. So anyway, I thought that was somewhat relevant.
That's a great point. Because if everybody hears this and just packs their bags and takes off, then if everybody just imagine all the temples clear out. It's like, all right, we're shutting down the temple. No more mortgage, no more paying the electricity. We'll bring the deities with us, and we're off. Then what happens to the West? Someone needs to stay. So I always think of it like that too, that certain personalities who will be in Vrindavan, devotees, be living there, and somehow they get there, they come from the West, or they grew up in India and somehow they land there, or they're from Delhi and they go there, whatever, somehow they land there. It's like, okay. And then there's people who are spread out through the world. So I always think, well, somehow I ended up here, so I'll just continue to stay here, and from a distance I'll Vipralambas, yeah, and then I'll visit every once in a while and try to do something here, But yeah, that's an important point. That, I mean, if you think like the Mormons, for example, I mean, they have I think it's Salt Lake City. That's like one of their main headquarters, or if I think it's the main headquarters in America. There's so many Mormons there. It's just like, packed with these, Latter-day Saints called. And yeah, they have their whole systems of, families and schools and, big churches and this and that. It's like, and you think of Mayapur, for example, Mayapur, India, right? And you have so many devotees, or thousands of devotees living there. And you have Gurukul there, and you have a brahmacharya ashram, and you have, a big temple, and you have, a few restaurants, and, it's Prabhupada Samadhi, then you got surrounding holy places. Now imagine if you transferred Mayapur, means the setup of Mayapur, to San Diego. You transferred it, means all those devotees converged. I mean, I'm not saying they should all pack up and leave here, but they could stay there. But imagine you had so many devotees in one location in San Diego here. We had a big temple, and there's thousands of devotees, and, we'd have some really good book distribution going on, some really good Harinam, right? Different parties, and so it could be like that. We could, buy the whole, Now someone may say this is wishful thinking, imaginative thinking, or whatever, but it's possible. You could buy the whole, whatever, so many blocks, and build so many. And ultimately, yeah, Srila Prabhupada wanted such things to happen. So we could have, that's what a Dham is, like an outpost, in, away from India, and so be nice, but anyways, we'll see. All right. So any last questions or comments? Does somebody have anything on the on YouTube, or usually somebody has something, a question they're writing or asking on Zoom or something?
We have
Maybe you could take off your mask. I can hear you better.
we have a bunch of Hare Krishnas, and we have one question from Sid Dishi. He says, Hare Krishna, have a question for Balaram Prabhu. Does Lord Krishna listen to our chanting?
All right, thank you. Does Lord Krishna listen to our chanting? Well, Krishna, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha. So he is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. Right? So he's able. He knows everything. Omniscient, omnipotent, is all powerful. Right? Omnipresent. He's present everywhere. So even in the atom, says, right, Krishna's present. So he's able to hear us, that's for sure. The Mayavadis don't think that. They think he's just impersonal and no form, and means no ears, no nose, no eyes, just impersonal. We think that's bogus. It's true. It's bogus. But so we accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a Supreme Person, so he could hear us, which is actually quite amazing because he's got a lot of people chanting. It's like people chanting all over the world. There's probably people right now all over the world chanting japa. It's like Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare, which actually, think about it, thousands of devotees all over the world right now, they're all chanting japa, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Or Kirtan, some Harinams going on right now. They say the Hare Krishna movement never sleeps, right? So it's always going around somewhere. Hare Krishna. So Krishna is able to hear, that's for sure. But depending on our sincerity, he takes it more seriously or not. Like, for example, it says that when a baby is crying, it could just be crying, right, crying for its mother. If it's a cheap or not cheap, if it's a fake cry, they just want some attention or something, then the mother's like, okay, yeah, I'll get to you. She's like, whatever, doing something in the house, or okay, but if it's a real cry, like, so there's some danger or something, then immediately the mother recognizes that and rushes there. So Krishna, he'll, depending on our chanting sincerity or seriousness, then he'll take it more seriously. Okay, well, you need some, or you want something, you want to, and you say, oh yes, I want to serve. So, and now the other question is, you're saying, does Krishna hear our chanting? See, that's an important question. But another question is, do we hear our chanting? Because the mind, right? Chanchala himana Krishna, it's going everywhere, all over the universe. Sometimes during japa, the mind wants to take a universal tour, right? Of the past, of the present, of the future, of all over the universe, wants to take a tour, wants to take a guided tour by the false ego. Okay, the false ego says, now I'm going to take you, mind, on a tour, right? A guided tour. The false ego takes the mind on a guided tour. So, in other words, too much thinking while chanting, or, absorption of other thoughts aside from Krishna, it's questionable the degree we're actually hearing. So, but we have to hear, because that's how we get purified. So to concentrate, to hear. Therefore, Prabhupada always stresses, sattva gun, because sattva gun means a person could hear. If the mind's too wild, too crazy, then we can't hear. So we have to try to hear ourselves as well. So that's important. Okay. All right.
So, Pani Ishapati asks, why when it says that we should not jump directly to the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, yet Srila Prabhupada wrote Krishna book and made it available to us?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So why, if it said we shouldn't jump to the 10th canto, why did Srila Prabhupada make the 10th canto in the form of Krishna book available to us? It's a great question. In the Srila Prabhupada would say that. He would say, don't jump to the 10th canto. Don't be like a monkey and jump to the 10th canto. What will you understand about Krishna? Go gradually. First, second, third, fourth, all the way to the 10th. Like we have our Jai Shri and Yogesh. They're reading Bhagavatam every night with Kusum for an hour every night, I believe. And they're on the 9th canto now, so that's good. Congratulations to them. But the 10th canto, it's the most confidential, because it's still with Krishna's pastimes. But Srila Prabhupada, on one hand, he said, okay, it's the most confidential and don't jump, right? But then on the other hand, he said, he wrote it, the Krishna book, and then he said, mass distribute. Distribute in the airports, distribute everywhere, to anyone. So, Srila Prabhupada, he made the most intimate, the most valuable, the most highest topics available to everyone, and mass distribute it. And you could say that Srila Prabhupada, he wrote the Krishna book in such a way that people, they won't become confused. Means he is very clearly wrote, Prabhupada added the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Personality of God. He wrote that so many times in that book. And indicating that, trying to help people understand, this is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's not just he's not an ordinary boy, dancing with ordinary girls. This is transcendental cowherd boy, as it's been stated here in this verse tonight. Transcendental cowherd boy dancing with transcendental cowherd girls, and Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, of course, someone could always become confused. That's there, but Prabhupada, understanding that people need this, he made it available. And also the Bhagavatam says if we hear from authorities, sober authorities, such as Srila Prabhupada, then these things will become very clear to us, these topics, and also they'll be purifying. Specifically, it's stating that the Rasa Leela will be purifying if heard from a sober authority. So, this is Srila Prabhupada's kindness, this is his mercy, this is his amazing thing he did, actually. So, mass distribute Krishna book. So, anyways, I hope that kind of, to some degree, answers Paneshwari's. All right, any last comment or question? No? Okay. All right, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.